What is up, nerds? Welcome back to another special edition podcast here with the owners of Selkerk. We got Rob and Mike Barnes. How are y'all doing?
Great. Thanks for having us out. It's been great to play with you and show you what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure.
On your show.
Well, thanks for having us out.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah.
Here we are. We're in Idaho.
Yeah.
Very, very beautiful place.
Yes.
We love it.
Very, it reminds me a lot of Louisiana, you know? Very mountainous now. Well, we are obviously here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho for a little paddle launch event, media event. Obviously a lot of brands do this. Can y'all just talk us through kind of the inside reasons or just kind of the mission of events like this and why they are? Because a lot of people have kind of different thoughts and opinions. Some people are like, oh, they're just trying to get in the good graces of the people who are going to talk about their products and whatnot.
Is it working?
Oh, yes. We're Selkerks now. So. But so y'all kind of just give us y'all's thoughts on that and kind of what the real driving force behind these are.
And, I think previously we tend to be very focused on our work and we just want to make paddles, help work on building our company and such. And so we haven't really shown behind the scenes. But just as we've done that, we've seen certain narratives take off that I don't think reflect accurately on the reality of what Selkerk's been doing, especially over the last 18 months or so. And so we really just wanted to bring people out, open up the hood and say, look, this is what we've actually been doing. Here's the decisions we're making. Here's why, and kind of put our narrative out there, which we think more accurately represents what we're doing. And so far we feel like it's been well received and people are seeing, what we've been investing in with the lab and R&D. And then even just beyond that as a company, how we have a little bit of a bigger vision for what a pickleball paddle company can be. We're about building the ecosystem, about building all the things around that to support players, not just paddles, even though paddles will always be our bread and butter where we spend most of our time innovating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we were really trying to show you guys the meat and potatoes too. Like we're trying to keep it simple, really show you the high level, and try to take out as much fluff as we possibly could to make sure we were clearly communicating what we're trying to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have a question. So events like this, we can call them in-person marketing or, things like that. So it kind of fits within the larger picture of your marketing strategy. And you guys touched on briefly this weekend about how events or maybe in-person events might become a larger part of Selkerk's, let's say marketing strategy, but just strategy overall moving forward. So you kind of alluded to this, but do you think this will be a repeated type of event, or are you guys looking to branch into other types of in-person events for not only influencers, but just players and advocates or whatever?
Yeah, we would love to dig more into in real life experiences is what we call it internally. And we were the first paddle brand to really invest in digital and social back in 2019, 2020 when nobody else was really doing that. And so and shortly after that we started Selkerk TV. We were filming lesson content, shows, matches, and so on. So digital has always been a big part of our brand. But we're just seeing a lot more opportunity with those in-person experiences, and you really can't replicate it. You can't do that digitally in most cases. Just like this event, it wouldn't have been the same, any other way but in person and at our facility. And a big part of that too is demos. As a brand, we've always been big believers in demos. We know that if we can just get our product into people's hand, that they'll like it and they'll often switch. And so that's a big part of our strategy across the board. We support a lot of teachers. So we want to find more ways to bring people and to experience our brand in person, whether that's events or even with retail, where we have a lot of initiatives going on to do a better job of merchandising our product when you show up in the retail experience.
Yeah, I can kind of give some, like a side story. The Stacks Pickleball is a indoor facility that opened about year and a few months ago, and y'all were the first brand that they reached out to that immediately was just like, yep, here's 40 pedals, and a lot of people were like very hesitant to do that. So it's kind of showcases how y'all's you're not so consumed of just selling products as much as you're more concerned with growing the sport and whatnot. So very evident in a lot of things y'all do, but obviously that's one like super blatantly obvious thing that y'all do a lot of. I mean, you see Selkerk products in every single
A lot of facilities,
indoor
yeah.
facility you go to, basically, 90%, I would say, at minimum. So it's very cool to see those throughout, anywhere you go. I can definitely see that's one of y'all's like missions to,
Yeah.
grow the game. So it's
Yeah,
cool.
we also have our growth program. We give away tens of thousands of paddles
Yeah.
to nonprofits, a lot of schools, first responders, just trying to give opportunities for people to play and try the sport. And even moving forward, that's going to be a bigger part of our brand, is being that player development platform. We're kind of reshaping even pros, who we're targeting, where we're really focusing on undiscovered talent and trying to build a system for them to grow and be successful on the tour.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good pivot to the pro game, or if you want to jump into the R&D and innovation.
I think let's save pro for last because there's a couple kind of linked topics we want to go into pro play.
Yeah.
But I do have some questions about R&D because, you kind of talked about correcting the narrative, or not necessarily correcting it, but just bringing people out and showing the behind the scenes so that the narrative is maybe more accurate, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of speaks to that. I think that maybe there was a belief behind the scenes, and I'll go back a couple of years, that people would say, why isn't Selkerk innovating, or why is Selkerk behind the curve, so to say, for what the market was doing in general? And this is outside of, you guys are a large company, so the supply chain may be longer. But just consider what, like the enthusiasts would have called the paddle developments, going from Gen 1 to Gen 2. Selkerk got there, but it did seem a little bit behind the curve. And then to Gen 3, you guys are now there, but seemed a little bit behind the curve. However, I would say that now recently, you guys are not behind the curve at all. You were pretty early to foam with the 008, and then I'm sure you continue to do work there. And then now we've seen the labs program and all that. So I will add an aside here. I think that people say that Selkerk wasn't innovating before. We know that you guys were, because you were doing a ton of edgeless stuff. You're the ones doing the hole in the face. I think the
Finny grit.
Yeah.
grit too. I think the idea maybe was that you weren't innovating because it wasn't the same innovations that the rest of the market was doing.
Performance, right? I
Right.
think that was kind of what became the narrative the last 12, 14 months, right? Was power was innovation, right?
Right,
And we just weren't willing to build a product that broke to perform like others were, and that's why we've been doing the R&D in the background to basically fix those problems. And some of the products you got the boomstick you got to hit this week, right, kind of shows see the direction we're going with that.
Yeah, so that was kind of, I know I rambled for a bit. My final question was, how do you think your R&D process has changed, outside of the testing machinery? Selkerk 2.5 years ago to Selkerk now, that maybe puts you guys from perceived behind the curve to now perceived ahead of the curve?
Yeah, so 2.5 years ago, it was me and maybe one or two other people. It was a very, very small team. So we were having to outsource a lot. We were still able to innovate, but it wasn't at the same scale and with the same precision we can now, especially with the machinery. So if you look at 2.5 years ago, R&D compared to now, it's a totally different world. Our team is quadrupled. We have way more resources invested on that side of things. We've heavily invested in machinery, and we kind of built a whole new internal process to be able to innovate and iterate super quickly. And also the other important thing that we were kind of missing, or we needed to refine, is that consumer feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Because what you can always get trapped in, I mean, I would say we did too, is you get kind of in an echo chamber, and you're just kind of listening to a few signals and not actually looking at the whole picture. Who are you building this for, right? And so then you're just kind of pumping stuff out, and you're not really, well, who's this paddle for? What play style does it mean? And you just kind of pump out product. And we try to be pretty disciplined with that, but you can fall into that trap. So that was one thing, especially 18 months ago. We kind of did a reset. And obviously you saw stuff like 007. One thing I think you guys get this is product timelines. You're a minimum of 12 months, usually longer, right? And so a lot of the systems we've been building is how do we shrink that, especially as we're getting large, right? And Labs is a big tool for that. But how do we iterate and ideate super quickly and get that to market efficiently, and then also get feedback efficiently and make sure we're checking our biases so that we're improving that product over and over and making sure we're actually still meeting the customer that product's speaking to's needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I think what we saw, the past couple days, it would be basically impossible to deny that you guys are like leading the industry in R&D at this point. There may be a few other brands who are nearly the same level or the amount of attention to detail, but it's not many, if it's any. We'll put it that way. So anyway, just wanted to kind of give you a platform to answer that, because I think that the perception may have been that you guys were behind the curve, and I don't think that's the case. And I think with your plan that you laid out, that perception is definitely going to change.
And I do think, to your point too, I do think we were behind the curve for a time because we were doing it. We were making choices to win long term,
Yeah.
knowing that we were going to sacrifice short term.
Yeah.
And even before that, like, we'll admit we missed a couple things, but even like Gen 1 to Gen 2, what we were really trying to figure out there was like there was all those core crushing issues,
Yeah.
right? So we were really having to work through that. So by the time we came out with our Gen 2, we were like making sure we avoided those pitfalls. So the question is, the way we built our company now though is how do we become the company that has the Gen 4, the Gen 5, and we're leading and we fix those problems because we have the system in place to make sure we don't have those problems in the first place.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, I mean, about when Gen 3s were coming online, we had a choice as a company because that technology was shopped between all the major manufacturers, and we actually got it and we tested it and it just broke down very quickly. And so us having a lifetime warranty, it really keeps us in check, and we can't launch product that breaks down. So we would have either had to have got rid of our lifetime warranty, made the choice of just trying to chase trends, but instead we knew that R&D was going to be really important. We invested in it, and instead of investing in just trying to keep up with the trends, we invested in a system. And now we have the system that we're able to run those iteration cycles so much faster. And any innovation, whether physical product or digital, shortening the iteration cycles is key.
Yeah, I mean, for people who are thinking that Selkerk was behind the curve, it is blatantly obvious that y'all are not. I mean, we're here specifically to showcase the boomstick and kind of test that out. That's going to be their new flagship paddle and is very good. I was very impressed. I don't know how you felt. I'm sure you felt exactly the same way, but it's a very, very good paddle. And seeing all the destructive testing and all of the R&D that y'all have put into that paddle is very eye-opening. I'm sure it took a very long time. So can y'all tell us, I guess the 40,000 foot view of that model itself and kind of where y'all feel like that's going to bring y'all to in the future?
Yeah, so not diving into too much tech specs, but just there's 5 patents pending on that overall paddle between design and utilities. And it really was kind of the culmination and the tip of the spear, sort of say, of kind of this is what we've been doing from an R&D perspective. Here's the first product that's kind of a fruit of that, and to show kind of the foundation we built, and then basically this is just the beginning. And so we have our Infinigrid on it. We have our new Boom Core, which we can't really go into, but it's basically a solid foam system. But that produces power, as you guys saw, and then also our
very, very a lot of power.
and then our MOI system, which basically just helps enhance the playability, and we'll have more data coming out about shortly after this podcast release about that as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially, in 2024, when power paddles were all the rage, there's a couple of glaring issues. One was durability, and I think the second was a lot of the power paddles weren't very usable. And so those they didn't have as large of a sweet spot. So those were the two things we really worked on, was durability, and what comes along with that is consistency. So the paddle plays the same on day 1 as it does on day 100. You're not having to break it in or constantly adjust your play style to how long the paddle has been used. And then in addition to that, just making it a power paddle that can be used by a larger swath of players, because it does have that consistent sweet spot.
And I think that's one thing with the new technologies we've been able to develop. We were kind of talking about this off camera, but is we're able to do multifaceted product, which allows us to simplify our lines and have very clear, distinct products that meet particular needs in the space.
Yeah.
You gonna move on to the panels?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're gonna ask the hard hitting question now.
Okay.
The Pro S1 ball, in theory, it's incredible. doesn't crack, lasts a long time. I don't know what feedback y'all have gotten. I personally don't love that ball. I think it gets kind of odd bounces. I think if we could fix the going out of round and the weird bounces here and there, I think it would be probably a universally adopted ball pretty much everywhere. Do y'all have any thoughts on improvements on those? Are y'all going to make like a S2 or, a different model for that?
It's funny. S2's actually on the board, but
Oh, gosh.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious.
Didn't mean to
No, it's
drop
fine.
it, yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's. I don't think we have to worry about anyone stealing that, but
Yeah.
no, yeah. So we hear you. We've been getting a lot of feedback. We've been iterating. We have a new version that should be able to still be as durable, a little brighter. Might be a little. We're trying to figure out, having two variants. That's maybe a little bit more like a Franklin style, right? But it's really durable. Has the same type of warranty, and then also more of a tour style, right, or a pro style. So the problem is when you get harder. So the Pro S1, we were really trying not to crack it, right?
Right.
So that's why it'll go out around before it basically cracks, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes can also cause the bouncing, here and there to be a little odd. But we did tweak it a little bit to be more consistent. But overall, like, we're basically redoing some of the formulas for the next iterations. And so we have the S2s basically done in the sense we're going through testing trials right now.
Nice.
And getting feedback on it. And then we're looking at possibly, like, do we do a tour version, like you were even talking about the life type ball, right?
Yeah.
That's a little bit hotter. So we're trying to figure out where these products fit. And we don't want to have too many options that confuse people,
Right.
right? And you just have all these random balls, and they're like, well, is it the tour one? Is it the non? So we're trying to figure out how they interact in the market. And then we're also working on quiet options as well, where you don't have to have a quiet paddle, but you have a quiet ball.
Well, I think you kind of answered, let's just say, like, the top 3 complaints about the Selkerk ball. People say it's maybe too dull. So you just said brighter. Some people think it's, too hard. You just said a little softer.
Yeah.
And then the major one is that it goes out around. And he said it's the hard-hitting question. It's really just because it's going to be the main criticism from this event in the past couple days, because everything else we saw we liked, But then we played the tournament,
Yeah.
and I just, it was just kind of funny. We were in the Selkerk facility, and then we're playing with the Selkerk balls, of course, and there were people there, and then some of them were even local, who were like, oh, odd bounce would happen. And they'd be like, that's the Selkerk skip, And I was like, you can't say that in here.
Yeah.
We're at Selkerk.
We're at their house.
And the back courts are a little odd, so those are on asphalt.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was previously a parking lot, so you do get weird. No
Yeah.
matter what ball you used to
Yeah.
do. Just, not to make an excuse, but
No, I know that.
I get what you're saying, and yeah, if anything, we probably should have. It just wasn't. We were really hyper focused on the boomstick.
Yeah.
But we actually did have S2 variants.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah,
But
so that would have been.
you're probably right, because if we're testing a new paddle, you want to limit the other new variables as well.
Yeah, so we were trying to do that, but it'll be interesting to get you guys the S2, get your feedback. Interesting statistic from all our testing was 88% of people preferred it over the Franklin ball, and
That's
we've had quite a few people.
Well, I'm a known ball snob, so
Yeah, what's your favorite?
well, okay. Every ball has a trade-off right now,
Yeah.
so there is no perfect ball. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I like the X40 for one session, but I will not play with it if it's older than 2 hours old. Like, so, I got 100 for $100 one time on Black Friday, and then everyone who knew me locally would laugh because I would bring a brand new one or two. We'd play with them and not leave them on the courts.
What if they held up longer? What if you kept
if it
the same
played
playability?
Yeah, if it played like the first hour and a half, it'd be great, but it doesn't.
Okay.
It just gets too mushy. And especially where we live, in the South, it's hotter, and I play mostly outdoors. It's humid, so yeah, Franklin for the first hour and a half is great, right? And then the inverse is true for the Lifetime, which is my personal favorite right now. The first hour and a half is kind of bad because the ball bounces too high. And this is my opinion. Maybe not everybody agrees with it, but it changes the game. It makes almost every ding that you can speed up, and it's pretty hot. But then after you break it in, so to say, which is not ideal either, after that hour and a half, 2 hour mark, it's actually great for a long time. Like, we have one we played with. It was, I guess it was probably, I've been trying to track it, maybe 18 hours deep. And it still plays amazing. Speed is good. It's perfectly round. It feels like not too harsh off the face. So that would be my current favorite ball. But like I said, there's a trade-off with every ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the X40. I think it's just the right speed for most people, especially people who are trash like me and Justin.
Yeah.
We will send you the S2.
Yeah.
And I'm even thinking if you run by the shop and grab, I don't know if someone's in there right now, but we'll get you an S2 to try. And
Yeah.
it'd be
Okay.
interesting to get
Very
your guys'
interesting.
feedback.
I'll give you very critical
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah,
You'll
I would
get
love,
it.
we
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
Ball snob.
Boss snob over here.
Yeah.
Gear snob. We'll just change that.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not just balls, honestly.
Yeah.
So
So as far as obviously manufacturing, we talked a little bit about paddles, balls. Have y'all thought about moving more manufacturing to USA based manufacturing? Because everybody knows, and you alluded to this when we were on the tour, as soon as you make something in China, it just gets out to everybody. There's no real
IP protection.
IP protection.
Yeah, yep. Yeah,
So-
no, that's a great question. So, I
Yeah.
mean, as a company, we were founded making everything in the USA and using mostly USA suppliers, and then over time with some of our more affordable products, we set that overseas, and then we've also now there's kind of three categories. There's made in China, there's made in the USA, and then there's assembled in the USA. And the assembled in the USA uses a lot of the. I don't know if you guys saw too much of the manufacturing, but CNC machines, graphic printers, adding edge guards, gripping. There's quite a few steps to go into the assembly process. That being said, we would love to be part of sort of the reindustrialization movement and try to bring as much back to the U.S. as possible.
Yeah.
And some of the new technologies we're working on will allow that. So we're really excited about that. Right now, we use kind of a mix of factories for various components and such. We also are, and I don't know, I think it's fine bringing up Vietnam probably. But,
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, because it's something we've been working on for much longer than the tariffs have been an issue. But working on factories in Vietnam where we could have even more control, more quality control, and there's better IP protection there as well.
Yeah.
And so the IP issue is definitely an issue. So that's where a lot of our critical things like Infinigrit we won't send to China. That's always going to be an in-house process.
Yeah, because everybody knows QC is obviously the most known problem, but not many people realize how easy it is to just have all of your work that you've done, your R&D, just shipped out to the next, the next
culture
paddle
is
company.
different.
Yeah.
The culture around IP is totally different, right? I mean, they may not even call it IP.
Yeah.
Is, if it is a property or not. But, you touched on this. I would actually like to ask you to clarify because people ask us this in the comments or online. Can you clarify like the exact difference between assembled in the USA and made in the USA for Selkirk products?
Yeah. So it depends on the product. Each product is a little bit different process. But if you go to our website, the products will say whether they're made or assembled in the USA, and you can click that link, and we have an article that explains
Okay.
the different processes that we can do in house when it's assembled.
Right.
And we don't, so it really depends on the product, but we are trying to get more information out there.
So it could be as little as putting on the grip and edge guard here in the US. Or you mentioned CNC and stuff, could be as much as like maybe the panels are made there and then you're cutting them and printing them here and then putting on grip and edge guard?
So a couple are, so you have Edgeless, right, is one category. So we're basically doing QC, applying Infinigrit, edge cap, and then running it through like the QC process.
Right.
So it saying that doesn't sound as much, but there's actually like 20 steps that go into all that. And then like Boomstick, the core is made at a facility overseas that we control, and we basically QC everything. And so that core comes, and what I mean by that is like the overall composite comes here. We print it, Infinigrit, edge, cap, grip, QC, build up all that. And then the made product. If we're saying made, the core is generally always made here in the States, and then we're doing the CNC process and the whole process.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so even when we're using overseas factories, we have our quality control people on site, making sure it's being done right.
You have a notable Selkirk employee in Asia right now, right? Monitoring?
They're kind of more learning and building some of the systems, but we have actually,
Our brother.
I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it.
Well, we have actually.
We have another
you
one.
missed some of our engineers. We actually have two other engineers over there right now going through just all our, mostly for a lot of SLK stuff, but going through all our factories and checking on that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, cool. It's good. Yeah, I know. I mean, I know from my other experience in the industry, it's like if you're not going regularly to monitor, things will start to slip.
Right. Yeah.
But we have actual Chinese employees that are actually on site.
Okay,
So
that's
China-
awesome.
Yeah.
Chinese or Taiwanese.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we have actual QC people that are there all the time. So
Okay.
because it's a key,
permanent
kinda,
presence.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
kind of have to have permanent presence because if you don't, that's when stuff slips. You can't even go there every couple months. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you actually want to build quality.
Yeah, and then a lot of the work is also managed from our U.S. R&D team. So they're constantly working with quality control and making sure it's being built to our specs.
Yeah.
Yeah, another kind of subtopic that we touched on for IP protection that y'all are talking about is Infinigrit, and that's kind of like one of y'all's biggest, R&D developments that y'all have come out with recently, and it's kind of like underplayed, if you will, because the first paddle that came out was the 007, right? And that wasn't like a crazy well-received paddle or super highly played paddle, but it's implemented on the new boomstick, and basically the testing from that and the results from that are very, very promising. Y'all were estimating it's sometimes around 3 times as more durable than just a typical raw carbon fiber epoxy resin, and that's like huge because durability, of course, now is seemingly 10x, if you will, with foam, and then having a much more durable surface texture for spin longevity is like, those are 2 huge improvements that no one has made on a single paddle yet. Obviously there's replaceable grit, which Reload has done, which is awesome, very cool, but those are not like the super high performing paddles that blend durability and power. So I think that's a very intriguing value proposition for the boomstick.
Yeah, we were starting to see it more and more. I mean, Reload did a great job, and spin durability should be in the conversation, we believe, more than it is. Because it's something it's very expensive. It took a long time to develop the R&D. It's a very expensive process to apply. And so sometimes people compare, say, our pricing to other brands, and it's like, well, but when you take into account how durable it is, if you get paddles for free and you're switching paddles every 2 months, maybe it doesn't matter to you. But if you're actually investing in a paddle for a year, like having a paddle with more spin durability, more durability with the foam core, we think makes a huge value proposition. So even our high-end product, we always talk about adding more value. We want to have the highest value product. Sometimes that doesn't mean the cheapest product. I mean, it usually doesn't mean the cheapest product, but we're investing in those things that make it to where you're gonna have a great paddle for a longer time than you are going with someone that you're just gonna have to switch out constantly.
Anything that is remotely close to the the performance of this boomstick, we won't get too into detail with it, you're gonna have to spend minimum like $170. So minimum, the very least you can spend to get remotely close to this. And if the grit is lasting 3 times as long, that means that you, in theory, are basically needing to buy 3 paddles to get the same amount of performance longevity. Obviously, you're going to have that once you renew. You're going to have that first week or 2 of like elite grit, and then it's going to start to wear down with those other paddles. But people don't really think about that as much as they should, because they see the $280, $300 dollar price range or price tag. So it's kind of like a buy once, cry once thing. So which is in video production, like that is like one of the most commonly used terms. It's like, just don't buy the crap, buy the good stuff. Not that other stuff is crap, but having that durability is huge, and people don't other products that are 280 are not having that that longevity and durability, which is huge.
Well, we have a warranty too, right? So if something happens, right, you can never in composites, you can't ever do everything 100% correct, and you just try to build processes in place to eliminate as many problems as you possibly can. But we have a limited lifetime warranty that keeps us honest, and if you have a problem, you can email us, and within 24 hours you're gonna get a return label most of the time, and we're gonna send you a new paddle. So,
Okay, so I'll kind of backtrack but go forward a little bit. We were talking about the international aspects of pickleball on the manufacturing side. What do you guys think about the international expansion of the game and the market? I know that you have some plans already, but we're seeing the market grow massive in other parts of the world, specifically Asia, but elsewhere. And I assume that Selkirk being the largest player in the game and saying we are pickleball, you guys are going to take part in that as well.
Yeah, and international is a big priority moving forward and a big growth opportunity for pickleball in general. So, we actually, beginning of this year, started our European headquarters in Estonia, which is, a lot of people aren't too familiar with Estonia, though I know you were mentioning that you were familiar with it. And it's a really cool country. It's a little cold, but so I know it's small, so you don't see a lot of big companies moving there. But it's very tech savvy, very startup friendly. In a lot of ways, we run like a tech company and a startup. And so culturally, it worked really well for our company to have our European headquarters there and to be able to hire some tech talent for projects. But then we're also this year, hopefully by the end of this year, launching our Asia headquarters. And we're going to do that in Malaysia, actually, which is another little bit smaller country, but it's very, very modern, very free and business friendly, and is going to be a great sort of headquarters for us to reach the rest of Asia. And for us, our approach, kind of with everything we do, is to build from first principles. And so what we're not doing is taking the easy way out and just getting distributors in those locales. We actually want to build a headquarters, build operations, customer service, fulfillment directly within Malaysia and elsewhere. And so, it's going to be a process that takes time. But to us, a really important thing to succeed internationally is to not try to just copy and paste what we're doing in the U.S. over there, and not try to control from the U.S. too much of what's going on in our overseas headquarters. So you have to give them more autonomy, more decision-making ability, and let them kind of take a little bit of a different route than what we do in the U.S. and adopt things to the culture and the people. So that's essentially the route we're going to take in Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia is the fastest growing market for pickleball. Yes.
Isn't Malaysia like one of the fastest or most played pickleball played countries in Asia right now?
Yeah.
Like Vietnam and then Malaysia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's probably more players in Vietnam right now, but they're about a 100 million population. Malaysia is about a 30 million population, but Malaysia appears to be growing faster.
Oh.
And the other thing that's interesting about Southeast Asia in general is just demographically, it's a lot better than the U.S. and certainly Europe, and they're growing into being more of a consumer market. So 10 years ago, it would have been really hard for pickleball to gain steam there. But over the last 10 years, their wages have went up significantly, especially in Malaysia. Like people have disposable income, which is rare to some other countries and rare to 10 years ago. And so they're able to take on hobbies and sports. And sports is becoming a bigger thing in general. So demographically, with birth rates and everything, it's going to be a great market long term. And over the next 10 years, it's going to grow even more into a consumer market.
That's cool.
So follow up about Europe. You don't have to go too into detail about this, but we all kind of know that padel is blowing up in Europe in the same way that pickleball is in the U.S. It's almost like they're parallel paths.
Yeah.
Right? So clearly, you've probably done your research if you're going to establish a headquarters in Europe. What are your quick thoughts on pickleball versus padel development in Europe specifically? Do you think they can coexist? Do you think padel might try to choke out pickleball, or do you think there's like a strong foothold for pickleball to like live alongside, padel, which is blowing up?
I think they can live alongside, but the thing is, padel has done a really good job building out infrastructure. It's a very expensive infrastructure, but they did, especially I think it was 2020, they spent a ton of money to build out the infrastructure over there. So pickleball will live and thrive there, but it is always going to be alongside padel because they built out the infrastructure. Now, the other question is, could padel build out in the States or like in Asia, right? And that's where we think they're going to have a harder problem because pickleball is so easy to build out the infrastructure, very low barrier to entry, easier to learn. You don't have to have a very expensive court. That they're going to have a hard time getting adoption outside of Europe because Asia and US is not going to be willing, except for like really high-end clubs, to build out that kind of infrastructure when you can take the same amount of dollars and probably build 4 more courts, a little less real estate to put it on, and there's already adoption and kind of an infrastructure in the States for that, right? For a player base, right? So you're going to have to start from scratch with padel, whereas pickleball will probably face a little bit of that in Europe. as well,
Mhm.
but it's going to be much harder for Padel to establish elsewhere
Yeah.
than it was going to be
Makes
for
sense.
pickleball.
Do you guys think there's a legitimate foothold and growth opportunity for pickleball in Europe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going to be like Asia though. It's just
Yeah.
it's just not.
Well, I mean, what we're even starting to see in the U.S. is a lot of the new facilities are dual use, so they're coming out with pickleball and one or two padel sports, and so I think we'll see a little bit more of that, and you'll have some more advanced players be interested in the padel side, but pickleball will always be primary. We think in Europe something similar could happen where some
like
of these
the
padel
inverse.
facilities will start adopting pickleball, and we do think pickleball is more sticky than padel. It's easier to learn. It has a larger base of
Yeah.
people that it can appeal to. So Padel's done a great job in Europe, and they've kind of choked out pickleball up to this point.
Yeah.
But we think pickleball still has an opportunity to grow there, and where you see it starting to take hold, it is taking off.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Asia, Padel we don't think will make an impact.
Okay.
Move on to pros.
Yeah. So now we'll kind of go back to pros, which we alluded to earlier. We won't get anybody's specific names here, but I think if you were paying attention to pro pickleball, right, Selkirk went from a few sponsored players to a ton of sponsored players, and then now for the past 6 months, maybe a year, it's starting to see like that numbers trickling down. Like a lot of the Selkirk pros, there's always a news piece about this player left Selkirk, now they're sponsored by another company, right? So talk us through your strategy. Is that intentional, or are there other reasons, little tidbits behind the scenes you can give us of maybe why the pros seem to be leaving Selkirk, so
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah, so and that's it is very much intentional, and it's much more of we're not engaging in negotiations, not renewing, in some cases not taking options to renew, and so I think a lot of people in pickleball have gotten started in the last 2-3 years. I think even you guys, right? It's been like the
Yeah.
last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So for when people have gotten into pickleball, Selkerk's sort of been that company with a lot of pros.
Right.
I think if you go back further in history, though, that actually is somewhat new for Selkirk. We were never really the brand that had a lot of pro players. So early on, we were really focused on the teachers, on the advocates, and one or two top pro players. Is
Your mic is not picking up.
Yeah. What is going on?
oh no.
That's okay.
It's okay. We got this
Yeah.
back
That's
up fine.
good.
Okay. One or two pro players. So like I don't know if you want to go into a little bit, who those were, but
Yeah, so we basically had Tyson McGuffin. Tyson McGuffin was really kind of our top one. We got Catherine fairly early, but she was more in 2022. And yeah, we more focused on building a brand around that individual and promoting, because what was happening was you'd have these teams build out these really large, or these companies build out these really large teams, but there was no TV, there was no way to really promote the athlete. They were just like showing up to these events and maybe winning, but no one even knew about it or cared. And so what we really did, especially because we were pushing social media, was we took a face like Tyson and we basically built kind of an ethos around him and a marketing strategy, and actually pushed him as an athlete. So even though you could say even then there was more successful athletes, way more people knew who Tyson was because of how we were.
yeah, and it was essentially a Nike strategy. So Nike was one of the first brands that really defined sports marketing, and they took athletes, and they for every dollar they spent on an athlete, they spent $2-3 to actually promote them. And so most of our competitors were just spending their entire budget. Their entire marketing budget was spent on players. They'd give them a paddle and then just hope it worked out, right? Whereas we were much more intentional. We built lesson videos around them, marketing campaigns, a whole brand image that we spent to promote. And so it was funny. A lot of our competitors were very frustrated at us. They're like, I don't understand. You don't have hardly any pros, but you're still succeeding. You're still gaining market share. And everybody knows Tyson, but like, why don't they know my other 10 pros that are, about as good? But yeah, so we just took sort of a different route. And a big part of that was, like Rob mentioned, the PPA Tour, APP Tour, they weren't online yet, and most of these pros didn't have exposure beyond the people that showed up to the tournament. So most of their exposure was from us promoting them. But then when the PPA Tour came online, players were actually showing up on TV much more frequently. I think I looked at the numbers at one point, and the exposure the pros were getting went up almost 50x. And player salaries went up like 3x. A lot of other competitors were like, okay, this is just getting too expensive. Selkirk's not spending money and they're winning. Like, I don't want to keep paying for pros. But then when we looked at it, it's like, well, player salaries went up 3x, but their exposure went up 50x. There's actually an opportunity here. So that's when we went in and we spent and signed everybody we could.
Right.
And typically for longer term contracts, because you just saw we knew eventually people would see the changes in viewership and salaries would keep increasing. So we did that and it worked out really well. Now those contracts are coming due and we're essentially looking at where renewals are at, looking at, in our opinion, Pickleball TV viewership has plateaued. We don't see a ton more opportunity coming there, and we're deciding to refocus in other areas. And where we're looking to refocus is on rising talent. So just as a brand, we want to be the player development company. We do a lot of that with Selkerk TV, with we work with a lot of teachers and such. And we want to do that on the pro side as well, where we're really investing to scout and even run combines, find the best talent before they're discovered, and then build a system for them to grow and develop and be successful on the tour and even make a living at it. So that's sort of our new strategy for pros.
So kind of piggybacking off that, where pro pickleball was and where it is now, where do y'all feel like it is going? And kind of what is y'all's, I guess, MO to kind of be a part of that, if any?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to be a part of it. I think it's through our new program. We're not talking about the name yet, but basically a player development program is how we're going to approach it and basically participate. Where we think it's going, I think we've all seen kind of the salary craziness, especially with PPA, right? But even from a brand perspective, like if you look at any other sport like tennis, anything equivalent, like unless you're a top 100, no one's making a living. Like it's very rare, and you have to put in years to grind. It's $100,000 minimum per year in expenses to be on the tennis tour, and most of the time, unless you have a rich donor or maybe some random brand, you're paying that out of pocket. So it's kind of a rich person sport because of that in a lot of ways. And so pickleball kind of got ushered into this. All of a sudden, a lot of players were getting all these checks, right? Which was great for them. They were able to spend more time. Everything PPA was right, most of the major checks. But even on the pro side, even when we were signing people early on, it was still valued in our estimation 10x what the value was, like compared to other sports. But what we were all betting on was it was going like this, right? So you're kind of betting on trying to get market share. Well, now it's kind of plateaued, right? A little bit, at least in the States. And so I think what's going to happen is you're going to see salaries kind of going down across the board with pros. You're definitely going to see that with PPA. We're already seeing them renegotiate contracts, right? So you saw the value was kind of like this, and pay scales were going like this. And so I think you're going to see that come down to more of a reasonable. Maybe it's still a premium, but it's going to be more of a reasonable rate for where the sport's actually at. And then on top of that, I think what you're going to see is a lot of the existing players right now that are at the top. You'll have a couple, especially on the double side, that probably continue to obviously do well. But I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen all these new up and comers and kind of the new breed coming up, and especially even players coming from overseas over to here. I think are going to shake things up, and we're going to see new styles and new ways to kind of approach the game that these older players are not going to be able to keep up with, or at least only a handful. Yeah. So we see not only kind of a pay scale basically normalizing, but also a lot of the current players are probably going to get dethroned, and you're just going to see a lot of incumbents coming up and shaking everything up. That would be our prediction.
Yeah. And over the next 5 years, along those lines, international talent is going to be a much larger factor. And I think brands it seems like they're starting to figure out that doing mass sponsorships across the board isn't a smart strategy. You saw some brands take that strategy where they were trying to sponsor everyone. They're trying to sponsor the tour. They didn't really have a great product though, and then it didn't work.
Well,
and
so they weren't supposedly paying people.
Right? Yeah. And then, we won't mention names, but so like brands are going to take a step back, and what they really should be doing, what we're doing, is picking just a couple and then really investing in them, making them the premier, showing them in all of our marketing and such. And so brands are going to get a little bit more specific on who they sponsor, which is because for us, like even at the current rates, or even when we started signing people, they still were significantly overvalued compared to other sports. But that's when we invested in Selkerk TV. We're like, if we're going to sponsor these players, we need to make sure we're actually leveraging them. We need to make sure people are actually seeing them. And so we invested in Selkerk TV and content around them to amplify their voice so that we could get a reasonable amount of value out of it.
Okay, last question. What year, if ever, do you think pickleball will be in the Olympics?
It's going to be a minute.
Yeah.
Probably the 30s.
Yeah.
Would be our guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the window's already passed for 2028, unfortunately. Well, what needs to happen is pickleball needs to become more of an international sport.
Yeah.
So it can't. They're not going to introduce a sport that just the USA dominates in, right? So it needs to grow internationally. I think it's something like 70 countries need to have pro players involved, and we're nowhere near that.
I think the 30s is still pretty soon.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, probably high 30s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll hold you to it. I'll reach back out in 2038.
Yeah. The other thing is the governing bodies need to get figured out.
Yeah.
There needs to be good governance. That means nonprofits, no bias, mixing businesses with governing bodies. You've seen sports die because of that, like racquetball.
Mm-hmm.
And so that side of it needs to get figured out. And hopefully, USAP is a pretty critical part of that. And then a governing body that they can all work with and everybody can agree on.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it. We could ask a million more questions, but wanted to say thank you all very much for having us.
Yes.
Genuinely mean this when I say this. These are two of the most welcoming, kind, normal people that I've met. Believe me, I was
We
looking
don't get
for,
called that.
Yeah, our dad
I was looking for all the red flags. I was just like searching like a hawk. I was like, when are they going to break? Where's the crack? Where am I going to find? But y'all were just two super awesome, nice people. Everybody with Selkerk was just very upstanding and welcoming. So we appreciate that. We can see that y'all are extremely passionate, not only about the gear, but more importantly, the community of pickleball. And that's just awesome because it is probably one of the most community-based sports that you can play. And it kind of is one of those things, like when you get bit by the bug, you understand. You're like, oh, this is a completely different thing than anything I've ever played. So it's very cool. And to see y'all been doing this for, is it 11 years now?
Yeah,
11 years, yeah.
So y'all been here for a long time and seen like just a huge change and growth. So it's cool to see how y'all are still just as passionate, I imagine, as y'all were when y'all first started. So.
It's such a wonderful industry to be a part of. And we had a company we started when we were younger, and when we made the switch to pickleball, a big part of it was the community in the industry was so fun and welcoming, and we wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Thank y'all so much for having us.
Thanks for
Appreciate y'all
coming.
being on this little video, and that's it, guys.
Cool. It's good. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Peace. Thank y'all.